The DJI RS2 is an incredible gimbal that pairs perfectly with the Canon C70, but it's not perfect out of the box. So today we're going to walk you through our two go-to setups for easy flying and intuitive camera control. We've been flying gimbals extensively for the past 10 years, starting with our all-time favorite, the Movi M5, and onto our commercial and wedding workhorse, the Movi Pro. But we think DJI has knocked it out of the park with the RS2. And while no cinematography tool is perfect, we think this is as close as we've gotten to a perfect gimbal. The RS2's best feature is its modularity. Because of its NATO rail ecosystem, as well as the amount of accessories available, it's incredibly easy to create a rig that works for you, which leads us to the setups we're going to be talking about today. Now there's a lot of different components and parts to each one of these rigs, so we've listed everything in the description below for easy reference, with links to where you can purchase each of these items. We're starting up with our go-to setup for pretty much 90% of shoots. It's a solid, stable rig with a small footprint, which is perfect for weddings, documentary, or even low-profile commercial work. So because we're flying a C70, we need a couple of extra essential tools to make this work. So first up, we have the Tilta extended baseplate. The Arca baseplate that comes with the RS2 out of the box is pretty much useless. It's just too small to provide the support that a cinema camera needs, and your footage will suffer from micro jitters. But the extended baseplate provides a larger surface area for the C70 to sit on, as well as 3 horizontal screws for the C70's weird tripod mount configuration. If you're using the Tilta C70 cage like us, you'll still use the extended baseplate, but you'll mount it in a vertical orientation like with a regular camera. And if you're shooting with a different camera altogether, you can do even better and use the small rig extended baseplate, which provides an even larger surface area and the regular vertical orientation tripod mount. So the first thing we'll do is build our RS2 as we normally would and throw our camera package on the gimbal. Now we can't do this because we're using the Tilta cage, but if we're flying an uncaged C70 and we know that we won't be changing our lenses too much, we'll still attach the DJI lens strap and enable super smooth. It just doesn't hurt to do so, and we have noticed that the footage is slightly smoother this way. The last thing we'll do is we'll attach our USB-C control cable so that we can manually control the focus from the gimbal. Next, we have the base of our entire kit, which is the Tilta dual handle bracket. For this setup, however, we're just going to be grabbing the right handle and attaching it to the left side NATO rail on the RS2. We'll then grab the Tilta grip and attach it to the underside of it. We'll be attaching our monitor to this piece, which basically acts like a giant NATO rail, and to do so, we have two options. The first is to use the smaller rig monitor mount, which has the 1/4 inch thread at the top and a NATO clamp at the bottom. Or you can do what we've done, and if you have a small HD monitor, you can attach a cam bait NATO rail directly to the monitor and use a small rig monitor mount that has 2 NATO clamps on it. What we like most about this option is that we can just slide our monitor on and off, and we don't have to worry about screws coming loose during the course of a shoot. But what makes both of these monitor mounts excellent is that they're tension mounts, meaning that we don't have to adjust the knob to get our monitor where we want. We can just move it, and it stays in place. We're using the small HD Cinematography, so we have to use a gold or V-mount battery so that we can use it at its max brightness. And we connect this to our camera with a lightweight HDMI cable from Hyper or FreeFly. We also use a combination of sprig cable hooks to route cables and bongo ties to hold everything in place. Now on the right side of the RS2, we'll connect the Tilta rosette adapter and mount the Sony FS7 Grip to it. And yes, if you haven't seen our video on this yet, the FS7 Grip is completely compatible with the C70, so head on over to that video afterwards to find out exactly what you need to make that work. The best thing about this setup is that you can actually toggle the autofocus off on the grip and then move over to this dial to manually focus your lens. So at this point, you can connect the Lank extension cable to the grip and run it up to the camera. And we'll hold the cable in place here with a bongo tie and also a sprig clamp. And that's it. All we have left to do is bounce our camera package and shoot away. Now if we're working on a commercial shoot, we'll likely mount the Teradek transmitter with a smaller rig NATO clamp and run power off of the monitor's battery and run it off of the HDMI out on the monitor itself. Lastly, if we're going to be doing a lot of low angle shots, we'll actually mount this grip to the top side of this bracket for more stability. So our second setup is all about sturdiness and stability. While our first rig is our favorite, it is a little top heavy, so this rig fixes that by inverting the handle placement. So this time around, we'll use the full Tilta dual handle bracket, which means that the RS2 battery becomes our left side handle. We attach the tripod mount to the bottom, mount the gimbal onto the handle, and attach the camera package. Now, because we technically lose access to the RS2 controls in this setup, we'll attach a Tilta wireless remote control handle on the right hand side, with its receiver attaching to the NATO rail on the right side of the RS2. This gives us the exact same controls that are on the RS2 body, so we can switch between modes, use the joystick, and even manually focus our lens with this dial right here. We then attach the Tilta rosette mount and the FS7 grip to the wireless remote handle. Now this is probably our least favorite thing about this setup. While we do get more stability by distributing the weight across both handles, this additional grip does make it a little bulky. Onto the monitor. Because this setup lacks the necessary height for the monitor to sit below the handles, and because it would obstruct the gimbal's range of motion if it sat above, we have to do a bit of over-engineering in order to get our monitor onto this rig. So first off, we'll attach two small rig NATO clamps to the right handle, and we'll attach a 10cm small rig NATO rail to both of these clamps so that it runs perpendicular to the Tilta bracket. We then attach our monitor. We prefer to use the mount on the back instead of the bottom for this setup, as it gives us a better range of viewing angles. Just to note that when you have your gimbal resting on the ground, your monitor will always have to be sitting up in a horizontal position, and you'll just have to readjust it once you pick up your gimbal and start flying. We then run our cables up to the camera using a combination of sprig and bongo ties. And that's it for this setup. Something that we haven't tried yet, but that would definitely balance this rig out a little better, would be to get the Tilta battery bracket that sits on the left-hand side. That way we can move our battery over from the monitor to the left-hand side and power our monitor, gimbal, and even our camera while distributing the weight a little better. We hope you found this walkthrough useful. Like I mentioned earlier, we've linked everything below in the description, but if you have any questions, drop them in the comments below. We've also included a link to our RS2 Settings guide PDF. The RS2 settings out of the box are a little nutty, and we need to fine-tune them in order to achieve smooth results. Our PDF lists our exact settings for each of the 3 different modes on the DJI RS2, as well as some tips to get the most out of your gimbal. We've also included screenshots directly from the Ronin app to get you back up and running quickly if a firmware update ever wipes any of your settings. Thanks for watching, guys. Till next time.